Welcome. Matt Williams.
That's me. Okay. Hey, my name's Matt Williams, and I'd love to welcome all of you to our 32nd annual Lorette LaPrevo Writer Symposium. And this is our very first virtual one. We are so pleased to have Gene Nickel, author of Faces of Poverty in North Carolina, with us today. We'll give Mr. Nickel a proper introduction in just a moment, but I want to say a few things about our virtual presentation today. First of all, we humbly request that you leave your cameras on during the presentation. That even though we're all scattered to the wind, that if we can see each other, it doesn't feel quite as lonely. Um, we'd also like, if you look at the very bottom of the screen, if you haven't muted your mics, please mute your mics. That, as Christina just said, at the end of the presentation, we'll probably hear about an hour today. At the end, after about 30 minutes, that we'll open it up to questions, and if while that we may allow some asking of questions through the microphone, but if you'll have it, if you're not actually speaking, if you have your mic muted, the chat function is to the right of the screen, and we'll open that up at the end of the presentation. And of course, notice the hand raising function. We realize that some of you may have classes at 11, and we won't talk badly about you in public if you have to leave a little bit early. But we would like you to hang around to the end if you could. In January, as Christina said, we'll post a video of this online so we can use in our classes and share with other folks for our edification, enlightenment, and education. With that note, I'll turn things over to my boss and role model, Randy Ledford, our Vice President of Instruction, and he'll give us a proper introduction to Mr. Nickel. Thank you.
Good morning. I hope everybody is doing well. I am Randy Ledford, the Vice President of Instruction at Caldwell Community College and Technical Institute. I'm pleased to welcome you to our third annual Lorette LaPrevo Writer Symposium. It is my honor to introduce our featured author this morning, Gene R. Nickel, the author of The Faces of Poverty in North Carolina, Stories from Our Invisible Citizens. Gene Nickel has traveled North Carolina from the coast to the mountains, interviewing thousands of North Carolinians and gathered firsthand accounts about the impact of poverty in their lives. According to his book, more than 1.5 million North Carolinians live in poverty, and more than 1 in 5 are children. Opening with the preface discussing the homeless population off of Lenoir-Rhyne Boulevard in Hickory, the chapters focus on Goldsboro, Charlotte, and Wilkes County. Nickel examines poverty in our state through the lenses of hunger, race, educational opportunity, healthcare, and immigration. Gene Nichols is a Boyd Tinsley Distinguished Professor at UNC Chapel Hill. He was previously the president of the College of William and Mary, law dean at the University of Colorado, and dean at UNC Chapel Hill. In addition to today's featured work, he has also authored Federal Courts, and he has published articles in the numerous law reviews. He is a columnist for Raleigh News and Observer and writes regularly for the Progressive Populist, the Charlotte Observer, and the Durham Herald. We're pleased that Mr. Nichols has joined us today for our virtual writer symposium and book discussion. Please join me in welcoming the author of The Faces of Poverty in North Carolina, Stories from Our Invisible Citizens, Gene Nickel.
Thank you very much, Randy. Thanks, Christina and Matt. I appreciate your hospitality. It is great to be here, even if on the computer, to what is actually, by my recollection, a much delayed and rescheduled presentation. So I've been looking forward to coming out there for a long time, and was hoping it would be in person, maybe sometime later, which would be terrific. I want to talk about this book. I'm grateful that you would give me a chance to do that. I maybe talk 20, maybe 30 minutes. I don't know. But concentrate a little bit on some stories from the book, some that Randy mentioned. But I look forward to having a discussion with you and questions that you may have. So let's start. North Carolina has a lot of challenges. I don't think there's much doubt about that. Its greatest, though, in my view, is poverty. Wrenching poverty, and it's plenty. In one of the most economically vibrant states of the richest nation on earth, also now the most unequal nation on earth. Thomas Piketty, the international economic inequality scholar who has taught us so much about economic disparity, wrote a couple years ago that economic inequality in the United States right now is probably higher than in any other society at any time in the past, anywhere in the world. Number one, ever. North Carolina, as a lot of you know, is on average even worse. We have among the highest poverty rates and child poverty rates and hunger rates and child food insecurity rates, rates of the uninsured, and now concentrating poverty rates in the country. Almost a quarter of our kids are poor. So it's hard to get accurate measures on that right now, given the impact of COVID. Well over a third of our children of color live in poverty. Greensboro, as some of you know, has been frequently tagged as one of the hungriest cities in the United States by the Department of Agriculture. Charlotte has the worst income mobility in the country, 50th out of the 50 large cities, so that if you were born poor in Charlotte, North Carolina, you are more apt to stay that way than anywhere else in the country. So those are dreary numbers. Frankly, they're horrifying, but they are indisputably true. Though they don't take their way into our public discourse as much as you would think they would. If having nearly the highest percentage of hungry babies in the United States isn't important enough to make it into our political agenda, you might wonder what is. Poverty's victims are often invisible to us, sometimes purposely so, I think. We turn our gaze away from those locked at the bottom. We understand that life might be tough in some quarters, maybe even impossibly so, but those brutal burdens appear across the tracks or across the town or on the other side of the state or the county. We suspect the hardship, and maybe if we saw it up close, we would even deem it unacceptable. But we're not forced to face it. We avert our eyes to more congenial terrain. So this book, the goal of it, I think, is to pull back the curtain a little bit, the curtain that shields the challenges of poverty. My main method is simple. I largely use the words and stories of low-income people and those who seek to serve them, drawing on hundreds of interviews over the last 7 years. Moving, I hope, beyond the dry statistics, the kind of bloodless data, the way I think of it, to the often reeling impact of poverty on the lives of what's probably 2 million Tar Heels, impact that is anything but dry and bloodless, burdens that are anything but artificial or just ideological. So I'm going to tell, I think, 4 stories. A couple of them are longer, quite short, from different parts of the book to try and get across the impact of the challenges faced in some of our communities. So let me launch into that. One has already been mentioned. It comes from the preface. Hickory, North Carolina, not very far down the road. What is it, 10, 15 miles down 321. It's hard not to be taken with Hickory at first blush. Nestled in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains west of the urban Piedmont, Hickory's 40,000 residents can boast of broad avenues, a quaint city center, welcoming neighborhoods, massive and well-attended churches. Hickory has the look of an older, easier Carolina. Even the name appeals. Hickory's been recognized as an All-American City. Reader's Digest designated it one of the 10 best places in the country to raise a family. But it's also, in the last 15 years, experienced immensely trying economic times. Pressures and alterations of global trade hit hard. Furniture and textile jobs, the core of its economy, disappeared quickly with NAFTA. In 2000, think of this, Hickory's unemployment rate was less than 2%. I didn't know anybody ever had an unemployment rate that low, well below state and national averages. But by 2010, it had soared to almost 16%, one of the 4 sharpest city unemployment increases seen in the United States. For the first time, homelessness had become a daunting problem. The Salvation Army shelter is pressed beyond its capacity. As a result, some 200 or so wounded souls live in the woods surrounding town. They are there this afternoon and will be there tonight. They patch together makeshift cardboard lean-tos and dilapidated tents, keeping a wary eye for the police and for complaining neighbors. In summer, the camps bear the oppressive markers of the South: intense heat, draining humidity, sudden rainstorms, relentless mosquitoes, yellow jackets, gnats, and snakes. In winter, snow and frost pose distinct and direct dangers. More than one homeless struggler in Hickory has perished against the cold. About a third of those living out, as it's called, are women. Some are kids, though their parents, fearing abuse and neglect proceedings, work hard to hide them. Rod Cornett and 15 or so volunteers of the Open Door Homeless Relief Project run out of the basement of the Baptist Church in nearby Conover, spend much of their days and nights and almost all of their resources trying to keep people living in the woods of Hickory whole, safe, and alive. Cornett is a 67-year-old businessman who suffers from a debilitating neuromuscular disorder. I talked to Roger again just a couple of months ago. He doesn't look the part of the heart-on-the-sleeve do-gooder as he crosses the county in a better pickup truck, NRA sticker prominently displayed. But Cornett and his cohorts venture into often dangerous campgrounds, distributing tents, tarps, food, cook stoves, propane cylinders, blankets, trash bags, portable heaters, and even dog food. I couldn't believe people were being left to live like animals in my own county, he said. A thin man in his 30s, Bill Stock, explains to me that a lot of us would be dead out here without Roger and his people. You learn not to look vulnerable, he reports. A woman has to get with a man or she'll get hurt. Making the point, Cornett introduces me to a lesbian couple along the wood lines. Janet T. was raped, beaten, and stabbed 2 days before we talked. She showed us 13 stab wounds. The sight is sickening. I don't know how long we'll last out here, she reports. Dorothy Edwards speaks of a young couple in their early years, Mark and Christina, that she still can't get out of her mind. Dorothy works with Roger. They both lost their jobs when the respective employers that they had relied on closed in the middle of the recession. Eventually, they sold their cars and they lost their apartment. When they could no longer afford even the cheapest motel, They had to go to the woods. Christina, in tears, explained, "This is new to me. Please don't pay attention. I am sorry for the blame. I know I've got to get used to it. I've never been camping before." When we talked, Marcia Stimson, who was 47, reported that she was then living in the Salvation Army shelter for the third time. "I'm one of their best bell ringers," she said, a top dude. "But you got to leave after 3 months, and I haven't been able to make enough money to eat and afford a place to live." She spoke with precision, but without emotion. "I was self-employed, doing pretty well, working in finance, but my business crashed. I lost my job, my income, my apartment, my car. I don't fit the norm," she said. "I'm not in the right categories. I don't have any addictions. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I don't have any kids. I'm not pregnant. I don't have medical issues. I don't have mental issues. I've been advised to act like I'm crazy, but I won't. There is no funding for someone like me. I'm almost 50 now," she said, "and it's bad, but I worry what it's going to be like when I'm older." At first, I liked the thought of living outside. I'd always enjoyed camping when I was a girl, but she quickly learned you've got to be secretive all the time. If people find out where you are, they'll call the cops or steal your stuff, or worse. She lived most of the time with a friend, Dave, so men would generally leave her alone. But even then, she didn't feel safe. "To tell you the truth," she told me, "in the middle of the night, I find raccoons even more terrifying than men." Stimson packed all her belongings in a trash bag every morning and then took them with her so no one would steal them. "When I'd come back," she said, "I sneaked past the mobile homes near the road because if they saw me, they would report me. The mornings aren't as bad. As an early riser, she'd get out of the woods by about 5 o'clock. Then you didn't have to worry so much about being seen." She was shocked when she first came to Hickory. There were hundreds of people living in the woods, lots living in their cars, a lot more couch hopping, going from place to place. Stimson's tough existence wears and debilitates. "In words that I haven't been able to forget," she explained, "when you've lost your job and you've lost your savings and you lost your home and your car, and then I even lost my cat, who was very dear to me. I know that sounds funny or stupid, but losing my cat hurt me deeply. When you lose everything, you lose your sense of being a person. You lose your own independent identity. You lose your own space to fill in the world. It gets hard to remember that you're still a human being, that you have a chance at a decent life, or that you even deserve one, that you are worthy of existence." That's from your neighbors. Second story is from Lenoir County in the east. Dr. Pradeep Gurungam is a heart specialist in Kinston. Lenoir County is one of the state's poorest. The doctor had many options when he started his practice, but he prefers the quiet, friendlier life of Eastern North Carolina. He's got a thriving practice that selflessly includes a potent commitment to impoverish residents who are insured and who can't pay the fare. As I said, he's a heart specialist. His patients, he said, are typically hard work folks who struggle economically: waiters, maintenance workers, cooks, laborers, retail employees. He says, as a heart doctor, he tries to see his poorest patients on a monthly basis because they tend to be at the greatest risk of dying. The failure to pay Medicaid in North Carolina, he told me, has had a devastating impact on his low-income uninsured patients. The most wrenching of those consequences occurred last year when one of his patients, who made about $10,000 a year working in a local diner, faced severe dangers of heart failure with a troubling genetic abnormality. Dr. A had treated her initially in the emergency room at Lenore Memorial. He was able to stabilize her and send her home, but her heart remained weak. She was in her early 60s. Her sister had died from the same malady. She needed a defibrillator, which for an uninsured patient could cost over $70,000. She couldn't get coverage on the open market because she didn't have enough money. She couldn't qualify for the subsidies of the Affordable Act because, ironically, she was too poor. Dr. A saw her for several months, but he was unable to secure the defibrillator. As a result, the waitress died. He could have saved her, the doctor told me. He treated her for free, and the medicines she needed weren't expensive, but she couldn't get the advice that she had to have. She'd be alive today if we accepted Medicaid expansion. That's the simple fact, he said. She'd be alive today if she lived in any of the 38 states that have accepted Medicaid. She died because she was a Tar Heel. She died because she's from North Carolina, he said. Third, from Durham, over my way, Nashonda Cook has taught in very high poverty Durham schools over 20 years. She estimates that typically 20 or so of her 26 students in class come from families facing extreme economic distress. They are kids who often haven't had enough to eat, who sometimes didn't own coats, or who wore their same clothes day after day. Students who know the trauma of coming home with eviction notice, or explain that they couldn't do their homework from the night before because the electricity had been cut off. They've scarcely traveled out of the neighborhoods where they live, or gone to restaurants, or seen an interstate highway, or been to the mountains or the coast. Many are from single family households where the mother, or less often the father, works long hours or the night shift, so that even third, fourth grade students live largely unattended. I'll go on a home visit, she said, and there'll be no food, no couch, no table, no bed. The children say, please don't tell anyone, Miss Cook. But I grew up in public housing myself. I know why they're acting out. Cook directs a program called Men of Honor on a volunteer basis. It provides a different space, a kind of safe haven for kids facing challenging circumstances. We alter clothes, we wash clothes, we give away clothes. We have a shelf with clothes arranged by size, since so many of our kids don't have winter clothing. We really hate snow days around here and extended vacations. Kids have their eyes on the food bags at the back of the room after they're delivered to the class. They don't know when they're going to be able to eat again. We also have a share table at the back. But my boys don't come in with their heads down, she says. They do their homework. They talk about how to treat girls, about how to deal with the police, about drugs, about their preparations for the world, she says. Grades have improved. Suspension rates have dropped. They do college tours. I tell them, I expect you to be here. And she tells them when they arrive on campus, I'm going to demand it of you. Don't tell me that the only career chances you have are in rap or at the NBA. When we spoke, Cook had just been invited to high school graduations at 4 different schools by students who explained that they would never have made it except for her impact on their lives many years earlier. One of my own favorite former students, you might have heard of, her name is Jessica Holmes. She's now a young lawyer, Wake County Commissioner. In fact, she just ran for a labor commissioner in North Carolina, unsuccessfully, sadly. Only a little more than 12 years ago, though, before she did her undergraduate and law school work at the University of North Carolina, she was struggling heroically with the traumas of extreme poverty in Pender County on the eastern coastal plain of North Carolina. I had these angel teachers that saved me, she says, fighting back her tears. They never really spoke about it. They didn't want to make me feel guilty. They acted as if what they were doing for me was just sort of normal. But when you come from where I grew up, teachers can be the dividing line between a teenage drug abuser or a pregnancy or a committed student. Holmes thinks that she had teachers committed to ending intergenerational poverty one student at a time. I'm not really so far removed from the life of those high poverty kids, she says. 5 kids, a mom, shuffled from homeless shelter to home shelter. We changed schools a lot. I didn't know till I went to college that some people had showers and air conditioners and central heat in homes. It was only then that I began to learn that people had computers and books to take home, or parents to read them, or to go to their games, or to give them rides. I'm asked when I go to school programs now as a county commissioner, the students always say, "What was your favorite book when you were a little girl?" I say, "I don't know. I never had a book." It was a different world. The only attorney I ever met was one dealing with arrests of my neighbors or my relatives. Conversations at home always included who got shot in the neighborhood or who was involved in the drug bust next door. Have you ever had helicopters hover over your street and have the lights cut out? I knew in some sense that the D-boys were doing things they shouldn't, but they seemed like pretty good folks to me. They brought me clothes and sometimes stuff to eat. They get taken away sometimes, but I didn't really put the pieces together. I had 4 younger brothers and sisters. I think the pressure was always greater for the older kids. I always thought it was my responsibility to make sure everybody had something to eat, not my mother's. I was much more worried for them than for myself. I felt like it was my responsibility to figure things out. If I didn't, I had failed them. Jessica Holmes believes that her teachers made it possible for her to escape and to become a professional and an elected public official. It started in the 2nd grade, she told me. My teacher would come around in the morning and put apples and fruit in my backpack. At first I thought the school was just a friendly place. They're giving food to everybody. I thought the teachers were just really generous people. Later, a high school coach would make sure that I had a ride home after practice. And then when a ride didn't come or things were tough at my house, the coach would let her stay at her house. She eventually began helping me with my classes, checking my attendance, helping me prepare for tests, Holmes said. She kept doing it even when tennis season was over. And then later, so did my drama teacher. They didn't want to make a big deal of it or get credit for it. That's just the kind of people they were. For all the talk about bad teachers, I know that angel teachers saved my life. What is the price tag for a teacher that saves a kid's life? Last, from over my way, Evan Askin is a doctor of family medicine at the UNC Medical School. He serves patients at Prospect Hill Community Center in Caswell County, where a majority of those Cs are Spanish-speaking and poor. A quarter are on Medicaid, 30% get Medicare, and 40% are probably uninsured. They don't fit the stereotypes, Evan tells me. Lazy freeloaders looking to game a system and get a free handout. That viewpoint is possible only if you've never worked with anyone in this patient population. I've never met a freeloader here, he said. His patients are simply people in excruciating circumstances, in intense distress, arising from things beyond their control. They are waiters and gardeners and motel workers, dishwashers, housekeepers, ironically, home healthcare workers. Maybe policymakers ought to come from Raleigh down here to meet them, the doctor tells me. Askin describes the choices restricting healthcare triggers. A man comes in with chest pains, but he's uninsured. We give him the stress test we would normally offer if he could pay. The clinic can't afford to continually pay for expensive procedures, so maybe the patient gets the test or maybe not. What if the doctor guesses wrong and the patient has a heart attack? We say we couldn't stand to have a two-tier healthcare system or rationing. But this is rationing. It's just rationing by the wallet biopsy, the worst possible basis to allocate care, he said. Why is a doctor exercising this excruciating balance? One of Askin's patients is undocumented, has lived in Caswell County for 7 years after fleeing violent abuse in Mexico. She was in significant distress early in a pregnancy, bleeding badly in the need of an ultrasound, presenting serious possibility of an ectopic pregnancy. Because of constraints on public funding for her care, even if Medicaid is expanded, the clinic is hard pressed to provide an ultrasound that she needs. And if it does, the decision may work to foreclose important scans later in the pregnancy, which will be essential to protect the mom and the baby. The baby will be a citizen, as is his sibling, suggesting how artificial non-citizen funding restrictions can be. So I have to help the mother through this wrenching choice, a choice that no mother should ever have to make. No one but a poor person would ever have to make such a decision. Do we avoid an early sonogram? But if we guess wrong, it might prove disastrous. Ashkin thinks of what he calls the brother-sister test. Would I think it tolerable if my sister had to make the kind of choices that my patients do? I believe that healthcare is a human right, he said. I also believe that on a purely economic basis, the argument to extend Medicaid is unassailable, locally, regionally, statewide. We're doing ourselves a huge disservice, he said. Ideology is overcoming rational, common sense decision making. And it has taken a hideous toll on the most vulnerable people in North Carolina. This book is mainly a portrait about the poverty that surrounds us. My goal is to paint a little picture of the challenges poverty poses for our sisters and mothers. But you can't really study poverty in North Carolina and ignore what the last 7 or 8 years has produced here. The greatest war on poor people to occur in the United States in the last half century. Looking at the inequities and hardships that I've just hinted at here. Since 2013, our North Carolina General Assembly has done this. They rejected proffered Medicaid coverage for 470,000 poor North Carolinians, though the federal government would pay almost all of the tab. This cost us billions of healthcare dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of thousands of jobs annually, a number of rural hospitals, and as the Harvard researchers indicate, more importantly, every year 1,000 or more poor Tar Heels die as a result of the decision. Thousands of us lose opioid addiction treatment, though we have among the highest addiction rates in the country. At about the same time, we enacted the largest cut on unemployment compensation program in American history, taking us from the middle of the pack to the country's stingiest program, last place. The next year, 2015, we became the first state in history to abolish its earned income tax credit, raising the taxes on working families making about $35,000 a year. No one else has had the high honor of so intentionally riding the backs of poor working folks. We then enacted 3 years of income and sales tax reforms that gave large cuts to the top 5% and raised the taxes of the bottom 40%. We removed 100,000 poor people from food stamps, despite the fact that the money, again, comes from the federal government, so it saved us not a penny. We required testing for Work First recipients, and we kept at it even after it was proven to be a colossal waste of money. We kept at it to humiliate poor people, I think. We ended the state's entire appropriation to legal aid. We cut child care subsidies dramatically. We slashed the dental care program for poor kids in the public schools. We made it illegal for cities to raise the minimum wage. The list goes on. The frank truth is, if the exclusions and indignities of American race and poverty are right, then our Constitution is wrong. If the debilitations of those locked at the bottom that I've described are acceptable, then our scriptures are wrong. If these denials of equal citizenship and humanity are permissible, then we pledge allegiance to a cynical illusion, not to a foundational creed. And I think we know it. It's like Lyndon Johnson said one time, we may know everything, but we know the difference between chicken shit and chicken salad. Pardon me. Johnson wasn't always crude. He was just almost always crude. I spent a lot of my youth protesting Lyndon Johnson. Horrified in war, he was this big, complicated, inconsistent, hypocritical, larger-than-life Texan. He holler at you, wave his arms, spit on you, spit on you. I don't know why I'm drawn to him. I come from Mesquite, Texas myself. But he also taught that American poverty touches both our personal conscience and our national mission. Under circumstances not enough unlike our own, he said this, and I'll close. Rarely in any time does an issue lay bare the secret heart of America itself. Rarely are we met with a challenge not to our growth or our abundance or our security, but rather to the values and purposes and meaning of our beloved nation. And should we defeat every enemy, and should we double our wealth and conquer the stars and prove unequal to this task, then we would have failed as a people, as a nation. For with a country as with a person, what is a man profited if he shall gain the world and lose his soul? For what does a man profit? Randy, I'll stop there. We can open it to questions or whatever you folks would like to do. I appreciate you listening for a little bit.
Thank you so much, Professor Nickel. This was wonderful. A big silent round of applause for you. Now we're going to take some questions. We would love to hear what you would like to ask. So who wants to be the first to raise their hand out there? Matthew Malloy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Gene, what is politicians' response to your writing? I mean, you lay out your case for so well. What do you hear back from politicians?
Well, sometimes it's depends on who the politicians are, of course. But if we're talking generally about the politicians in the General Assembly, they have not been uniformly warm, I think, towards my writing. As you might know, they had the folks on the Board of Governors close down the poverty center that I run. They tend to think that we don't need to learn the lessons that appear in this book. I think they think, and that's partly why I wrote it. They think that people who are poor in North Carolina deserve to be poor, that they're not willing to work hard, that they're members of the unworthy poor. I spend a lot of my life in low-income communities, and I think that what folks say from those communities is that they wish the people making our policy decisions would come down and see what their lives are like. If they, just like the doctors that I mentioned today, say repeatedly. If they saw what our lives are like, they wouldn't think we're just trying to get by easily without working. They'd know how difficult and challenging it is. But our lawmakers tend not to do that. People don't know the challenges of poverty, broadly speaking, which exist in North Carolina. And instead, not knowing, I think our political leaders frequently sort of invent a narrative which is inaccurate about those folks' lives. That narrative assumes that they just don't want to work hard. They don't want to do what folks are required to do to make a living. Let me give you an example of that. I mentioned that one of the things we've done in North Carolina is require drug testing for at least some Work First recipients. It's an interesting story. When we started doing that, the legislator who introduced it said, I want a pilot program. So when we begin this program of requiring drug tests for those who get this modest assistance from the government, I want to get a report after a year of how that's going, how much money we've saved as a result of the drug test, what percentage of folks were testing positive and the like. And so we did that. After a year, the report was issued by the Department of Health and Human Services. And it found that I think it was fewer than 3% of folks tested positive for drugs. And even some of them were then excluded from the program because their kids were the ones getting the benefits. I remember telling folks, I said, well, if you're just looking for positive, you should come to Chapel Hill. You can go to Chapel Hill across campus any afternoon at 4 o'clock, and you'll get at least 50% of folks that would pass, that will be identified for a drug test. The legislator who introduced the program candidly said, and I was shocked by this, it was in the newspaper, I was shocked that such a low percentage of people who were tested were positive for drugs. I believe virtually everybody who gets one of these welfare programs was hanging out and on drugs. I come from the Republican caucus who makes the rules, and most everyone in my caucus thinks that. So again, that's the notion of a mistaken set of perceptions driving public policy. But the worst part, I thought, was, so the legislator said, I'm shocked at this. It's good news. Hardly anybody who is getting these benefits is testing positive for drugs. The program costs a lot to administer. So he was asked, are you going to cancel it? Because you know it's costing you a lot. It's not doing any good. You're not rejecting anybody because there aren't any positives to speak of. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep testing. And I thought, why? And I think the real reason was, well, it still does some good. It humiliates poor people. They've got to be in a jar in order to have this kind of benefit program. So it's an example of what I mean. Not knowing what the lives of poor people are like, they assume a set of realities. Those realities are typically not accurate, and then they punish low-income folks on the basis of those inaccurate assumptions.
Thank you. We have another question, I believe, from a student, Luke Privet. Are you still out there? Do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am, I am. So Sorry, I'm pulling up the question now. In regards to the horrific disparity between white and black North Carolinians, what laws or practices are preventing African Americans of our state from reaching the kind of wealth and success rates that seem to be easier for white people to attain? Is this a result of an inherently racist state government or the result of suppression of opportunities given to the African Americans of our state?
Well, there's a chapter in the book on the connection between race and poverty in North Carolina, which offers a broader answer, I suppose, to the question that you ask. It indicates the intense and long-lasting relationship between race and poverty in North Carolina. The two have been linked hand in hand from the first moment of our history until this day. One thing I focus on here is the intense disparities which exist in North Carolina between whites and blacks, disparities on sort of every front of life here, disparities in terms of poverty, income, food, healthcare, access to education, the operation of the criminal justice system, the imprisonment system in North Carolina, the disparities in being arrested and being prosecuted on the basis of race. It's a stunning set of disparities. And what I say about it is, if white folks faced the sort of dramatic disparities which black folks do, if the roles were reversed, in other words, and we learned that white North Carolinians were suffering across every array, the full array of North Carolina life. What it would be fair to say is a system of racial subordination, regardless of the motivation, a system of racial subordination. If that was true, if white people were suffering that disproportionate impact, then there is no doubt that we would be going into special sessions. We would be declaring emergencies across the board. The legislature would be passing immediate remedies for this. But that's not the case. We see those potent disparities and we accept them as natural as the sun rising in the east. No emergency is declared. The fact that twice as many black kids live in poverty as white kids, the fact that twice as many African Americans are unemployed as white kids, the fact that the worst of these disparities is wealth. The average North Carolina black household has 6 cents on the dollar of wealth compared to white families. All of these notions are thought to be untroubling, unproblematic. They don't even get discussed in our legislative assembly. And I'll just stop with this. Here's one reason that that's so. We don't talk about this very much. In fact, I've been told it's rude to mention it. But we have large Republican majorities in both houses. We just reelected more of them. Our rules are then written in the Republican caucuses. And those rules have discriminated potently, as the courts have found, against African Americans in the political process, in the economic process. And in those caucuses, there are only white people. North Carolina's General Assembly governs from its closed caucuses like a white people's party. So it's perhaps not stunning that they enact policies which target and debilitate African Americans. What is stunning is that we put up with that and we allow it, even though it's 150 years after the Equal Protection Clause was enacted in the United States.
Thank you. One more question from Ron Holsty.
Now, Ron?
Hey, first of all, thank you so much for your time and energy on such an important topic. Your book brings sunlight and humanism to some major problems that we face. There are so many good Samaritans that help people who struggle with poverty and homelessness, yet the problem still continues. Have you found any great model programs that work to curb these outcomes? I recognize that most programs are topic or symptom specific, for example, working toward helping out vets or felons or substance abuse. But have you witnessed any programs that have had success? And then last but not least, where and how are these programs funded?
Right. Yes, I have. I mentioned to you one of them, working dramatically in the woods of Hickory at the beginning of this presentation. You know of lots of others. We have great food bank programs in North Carolina. We have among the largest hunger challenges, but we also have one of the best array of private or nonprofit food banks, which work effectively on that. But let me, Ron, let me broaden it out a little bit. Your question. I've spent. Here's one way I describe it. This might be a good way to sort of to end the presentation. 10 years working in low-income communities in North Carolina led me to believe four things. First, unsurprisingly, given what I've said, is that the level of hardship experienced by low-income folks in North Carolina is much more pronounced than most of us understand. That's what the book is largely about, so that's no great surprise. Second, and I write about this as well, you can't spend 10 years in low-income communities in North Carolina without also realizing that in every county in North Carolina, in every community, there are selfless folks working against the odds, often with almost no resources, trying to help those who are having a difficult time of it. The way I put it is, if Mother Teresa were alive today and living in North Carolina, she would not be lonely. And in truth, the level of work being done all across the state is so astonishing that it almost shames you, or shames someone like me. That's the second thing. So there's unbelievable levels of hardship, and there are remarkable levels of charitable work being done from unusual places. I was a university president for a while, law school dean for a long time. So I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, but I have met some rich people in my life. That's what law school deans do. They meet rich people. And I used to think, well, that's one of the best ways that we can solve an array of our problems is wealthy people sharing more of their resources. And there are wealthy folks. But what I've learned in North Carolina is the greatest generosity comes not from wealthy people, but from poor people working in their own communities. I don't want to offend anybody, but particularly poor Black people who have not 2 dimes to rub together, but what they will do to try and make life a little better for those who they think are having an even harder time of it is astonishing. So that's the second thing. All this work's being done. Third thing, if we could get on this Zoom call and we could line up all those people doing that great work, they would all say that no matter how hard they work, how much they do, that they cannot make up the gulf between what needs to be done and what can be provided. If they were more inclined, they would say with Augustine that charity cannot make up for a want of justice. And fourth, if we had all those same people in the room, sadly, they would say, despite what you may read in the paper or what politicians may say, the gulf which can't be made up is worse now than it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. So that, it seems to me, is the story of poverty in North Carolina and its dramatic challenges in our lives.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Lily Williams, would you like to present your question, please?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. My question is, have you been keeping up with the increasing poverty in North Carolina since 2018? If so, do you know how it has been affected due to the coronavirus outbreak?
Yes. Yes, I have. And it's, we still are doing interviews across North Carolina. Poverty is worse, as you might guess, Lily, though it's kind of hard to get a grip on because poverty figures usually come from the best ones come from the Census Bureau, and they are slow incoming. So they don't work great in measuring hardship at the very moment. But we've tried our best, and the Census Bureau is putting out good short-term data. So we know that hunger is worse, as you might guess, than it was in 2018. We know that unemployment is markedly worse than it was in 2018 because of COVID, as you know. Poverty is increased, and income suppression, I guess, or low levels of income is an even greater problem. That's not going to surprise anybody dramatically. Our economy did improve some between the Great Recession and back until March when COVID hit. But here's the reality post-COVID. We're now in the middle of three great traumas all at once. A healthcare and a health trauma, the COVID pandemic, which is astonishing and cruel and gigantic. Secondly, that healthcare pandemic has caused depression or certainly a massive recession in North Carolina. And we've been able to see how poverty affects different segments of the community differently. We got all kinds of folks who the claim is they're in essential work, but much more apt to be Black and Latino, suffer great disparities. And then third, as you know, we are also at present undergoing a massive sort of re-examination of the potent challenges of systemic racial discrimination in the United States. Those three things have opened up for anybody who's willing to look the really remarkable levels of inequality in our country. We, as I said, or as Piketty said, we are the richest, the poorest, and the most unequal nation in the world. That inequality also, given what we profess, makes us, I think sadly, the most hypocritical nation in the world. So these three traumas staring at us at once ask in very potent ways whether we're going to take them seriously? Are we going to are we going to try and face head on the fact that we have become the most unequal nation among the major nations in the world? Or are we going to accept that as our calling card? I hope in North Carolina we'll learn to do better.
Thank you. We have one last question from one of our students. So Eden, if you would quickly like to ask our question, and then we'll wrap it up today. Are you with us, Eden? Enable your little microphone at the bottom.
Her internet connection looks like it might be poor, so she might not be able to speak, but
Okay.
give her a second.
Okay. Before we wrap it up today, one of the things that we might want to consider is inviting Professor Nickell back. We would love for you to come back, please, and continue this discussion. Or perhaps in the future, there is a new book. Could you tell us just briefly about your new book before you go?
I have a new book which is more political perhaps than this one. It's the title is Indecent Assembly, and it explores the record of the North Carolina General Assembly on these fronts in the last 10 years. It is pointed and more, I suppose, more politically bent than the poverty book is, though both come from a similar set of claims that we don't do a good job by those at the bottom in North Carolina.
Thank you, Mike. We look forward to reading this book, and we look forward to hopefully continuing this discussion. Thank you, Ronnie. We are so thrilled that you joined us today. We cannot thank you enough for taking the time. Several of our classes are reading the book next semester, so we will be able to use this as a resource for them. We greatly appreciate the work that you do, and this was a wonderful work, very applicable for all of us to experience. So thank you
so
very much today.
I would be delighted to come to town whenever we get out of this business that we're in.
Absolutely. We hope to see you soon.
Great.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Yay!